Alee. How's it going?
Hello.
You're back. I will say that music is a vibe this
It
morning.
it
This is
is. It
my
is.
first time in the new format, and it's like so shiny. Well, thank you so much for being here today and for coming and talking to us. I'm going to take one out of Steph's book and ask you, are you having a frugal week or are you having a spendy week so far?
Definitely a spendy week. Amazon has showed up at my house a little bit too many times this week. I had a nice greeting from them this morning for some new things I ordered yesterday because I couldn't live without them. So I'd
Lovely.
say definitely a spendy week. But I'm also going on a trip next week, so I think that's partly why.
Perfect. Yeah, you got to prep. You got to get the essentials, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Prepare.
Yeah. I can't. I could go either way. We were talking a little bit in the pre-room. I had a little bit of drama this morning because Costco was trying to deliver me a couch, but I have not ordered a couch. So that could be very frugal. However, I didn't receive the couch, so I guess maybe neutral. But yeah, that's how my morning's going.
I still can't believe you didn't ask more questions about this couch. I'm still curious of what it looked like, what couch it was. Costco has some great couches.
I was stressing. I was stressing, man. It's too much for that time in the morning. Awesome. Well, thanks everybody. It looks like we've already got some folks in the chat saying hello. Alee, can we just give the people a quick 1 minute origin story, reminder of who you are and where you're from?
Yes, so it it's been a while, everyone. So I am Alee Whitman, and I am a principal solutions architect in the tech innovation space at Amazon. And I actually just rejoined, so I'm what you call a boomerang. And prior to joining, I was a customer myself. I ran cloud enablement and optimization over at the Walt Disney Company as a senior staff product engineer, and it was such an amazing experience to sit on the other side and be a customer and really practice what I had been talking to customers about at AWS prior to leaving. And it is just a different experience to be able to see it from the other side and understand how do customers really think about FinOps in the cloud when they start to put it into practice. And before that, I was actually at Amazon working with Savannah under the optics team. Still, I think one of the best teams at Amazon and one of the most value add for a customer. In this space, I got to work with so many different customers and figure out the best ways that we could help them optimize and run efficiently. And running efficiently doesn't always mean cutting cost. It can mean how can we make sure that they are meeting their goals in the FinOps practice space.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks, Alee. And that's all perfect. If you guys are new viewers or this is the first time that you guys are seeing us, welcome. This is the Keys to AWS Optimization, and this is a show where we share stories, concepts, and solutions that can help you optimize and unlock your spend on AWS. Alee has already given us a wonderful intro. My name is Savannah Judson. I am a senior FinOps success manager on the optics team, as she's described. So excited to have you all with us today. And Alee, thanks so much for coming back and rejoining both Amazon and our show, I suppose.
It's good to be back. I keep on in my head, guess who's back? And it keeps playing in my head.
Yeah. Incredible. Um, so I know one of the things that I think about a lot, but we've definitely been reminiscing a bit as we prep for this and as we do some of the like pre-planning about what we're going to talk about is how much things have changed. We all know FinOps is kind of a newer industry and it's fairly scrappy, like we're all learning together. But can you just give us like a quick soundbite on like how long you have been, I guess, gone from Amazon, but not gone from the space, and like what's changed in that time?
Yeah, so I'll even start it a little bit earlier than that too. So when I first joined Amazon, um, the easiest way to kind of mark my joining was about a month or two after I joined. I think it was a month or two after I joined. Hopefully, it wasn't later than that. I was around the time that savings plans came out. So savings plans were my first stint. It's kind of when you can think about that, and um, it was a really fun, exciting time. Left Amazon in March of 2022. Yes. And I have to even think about that now. It's just
It feels like just yesterday.
like it feels like I was only gone for 6 months.
Yeah,
And so when I left, there was no such thing as even cost optimization hub. There was no such thing as savings plan analyzer. Um, compute optimizer recommendations were just kind of kicking off.
very different
Very, very
looking than they
different.
do now.
There was just so many things that, you know, were what I would almost call in more of the scrappier area. Like think about one of my, and I always have to bring these in. So near and dear always to my heart is the cloud intelligence and the Kudos dashboards. And those were just kicking off open source. We had our 3 core dashboards, and we were still scrappily going around trying to get customers the tools and resources they needed to be able to enable them. Now you have an option to one click it, and Yuri and the rest of the team have taken it to having so many different dashboards that customers can use for all different types of their use cases, not just based ones anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like every time I go on that page, there's more stuff and more different ways to look at it, and just always growing.
It's really always growing. And I got pinged by someone and like, hey, would you mind presenting to a customer on the cloud intelligence dashboards? I was like, give me another month because I need to get back up to speed on how much great innovation has happened there and what all has changed, because I've seen it from the customer side, but I'm still getting back up to speed of what's happening internally, and I can't wait to get my hands back onto them, but trying to ramp up still.
Yep. Oh yeah. I think it's constant. At least for me, the tools are new too. We have this funny thing called reInvent every year, where we get a bunch of new tools to play with and a bunch of new launches to make sense of. And I think like that's one of the things that keeps it interesting and probably keeps the people like us who are a little bit maybe more excited to learn new stuff and play with stuff that we're not super familiar with all the time, engaged and in the space. So
Yes, and speaking of playing with tools, playing with everything, everyone here, you should have a demo account. Have an account, and Savannah and I
yes.
were just talking about this. I don't call mine demo. She has a demo one, but everyone have one that you can just get scrappy on. You can be able to test out new things that come in a low stakes environment, but it is 100% needed because there's so many services that come out that aren't even always FinOps based that you might just want to dabble in because it will help you better understand what it's going to look like from a FinOps perspective too.
Absolutely. And depending on like what your access looks like, if you're internal to AWS, like that could be an Isengard account. If you are outside of AWS, that could be just a linked account in your organization. Honestly, I think the ability to just go into the console and see what the experience of looking at different services is really important, even if you don't spin anything up, because if you're living in Cost Explorer or living in Cost Tooling all day, every day, and looking at something, it's really easy to say, like, oh, we got to go spin that down. But if you don't have the context to be able to figure out how to do that, it's really hard to meet your engineers where they're at there.
Yep. And actually, Savannah, when we were prepping on this, we were actually, no, it wasn't the prep on this. It was another call we were having. And it was actually with one of our product teams. And Savannah was talking about something that you can get out of the console. Me being a customer for a while, I got very comfortable in the ways I was using the console myself. And I used it as a very specific way. I didn't even realize that feature was available there. It was a way that you could download a report from the console, and it was just a PDF report, but I was always used to having an email version of it that I myself wasn't staying on top of the trends and missed that. I could have started self-servicing fishing for myself. So I think always just going in and checking what's new, getting out of your comfort zone of your standard process of what you do every morning and you check your console or check what you're doing. Always see what's new, see how you can do your role a little bit more efficiently too.
Allie, we have some fans in the chat shouting out your spreadsheets as the preferred optimization tools. I'm going to have to +1 that. I will co-sign on the majesty of an Alee Whitman spreadsheet specifically.
I I will never be able to leave Excel. Excel spreadsheets are my jam. So if anyone here ever wants to have a fun, just scrappy, let's try and make a really fun Excel FinOps spreadsheet that maybe we can turn into a product down the line, I'm all in for it. And just a quick plug, my favorite formula, it's a very basic formula because I think you don't need to be over top, is an XLOOKUP.
Yeah.
The most amazing formula that Excel has ever came out with is an XLOOKUP.
Chef's kiss.
Seriously.
Um, on that, I guess, note, we've got a question of which features, tools, or tools as a whole do you like most now that you are, I guess, back from being a customer? But what did you see as a customer that you didn't expect, like loving?
Cost Optimization Hub.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is the first time I heard about it coming out, I was like, what are you doing? Like, there's nothing new coming from this.
Mhm.
What is the value add? But then you look at it and you're like, this is probably one of the most valuable tools for a customer in the FinOps space. And I will tell you why. There are so many different optimization recommendations that come across AWS. There's so many different FinOps places that you can go. Cost Optimization Hub centralizes that all. It's one feed connection. So now as a customer, I didn't have to stay on top of all the latest launches and set up my new data pipelines. All I needed to have was Cost Optimization Hub available. So I think small little tweaks in the way that the service team was thinking about, not, hey, let's launch all these new product features. Let's launch ways that we can enable our customers to better use what we have available. And I think that is what I really, really liked about Cost Optimization Hub, because it really took the guesswork out. And I don't know if any of you have had to collect like compute optimizer data. It's
Mm.
not always the easiest across regions. It's definitely doable. There's some great labs out there to do it, but Cost Optimization Hub took the guesswork out of that. And so I will say, Cost Optimization Hub, if folks don't have it, go get it now. Rick, from the product team, is one of the most customer obsessed, forward looking people out there who is really thinking about how do customers interact with the tools and how can we make sure that their lives are easier and we can enable them to be more successful.
And speaking of, I think that like the anecdote you mentioned about downloading data versus being able to self-service, I think one thing that people overlook on Cost Optimization Hub sometimes is the ability to create that recurring export that will pull those recommendations for you and just dump them out in a format that you can parse yourself. It is such a one-stop shop. I like we've come out with a lot of more recommendation updates for Compute Optimizer. And I remember prior, I used to have to go into my demo account and like go into Compute Optimizer and tinker around. And now they just all flow into the hub. So I don't
Mm-hmm.
have to go seek it out. I don't have to play with them one-to-one. It just adds to the report that I already have. It's easy. It's right where I want to see it. And there's an export ability as well. So
Yep.
excellent. So Alee, I know you are keen on getting access to data. Do we want to demo how folks can turn on the hub if they
I
haven't
think we
already?
can. And I saw that in the chat. Someone asked, how do we enable it? And while Savannah's pulling this up, I think one of the things to think about too is as a FinOps practitioner or anyone who's in the FinOps space, even if you're not the practitioner yourself, maybe you're an engineer, maybe you're a leader in the space, look across your AWS services and see which are free and what you don't have enabled. Cost Optimization Hub is a free service. Me and Savannah were talking about it. There's very few cost enablement and cost optimization tooling that AWS charges for. And I think there's a good reason for that. You shouldn't have to pay large sums of money to have native services available to optimize your cost. There's very specific use cases where you're customizing, where you might want to have a paid service. But for the AWS native tools, almost all of them are free. Go turn all of them on if they're not turned on. Even if you're not going to use them today because you don't have the resources to use them, turn it on, let it start collecting that data like Savannah was talking about, because when you do want to use them, it's so much more powerful to be able to trend back as far as you need to and say, hey, look where we've come, or look where we started, look what this impact we've made is. And so call to action for everyone on the call, after Savannah shows you how to turn this on, go double check that all of your free AWS cost optimization services are turned on. And always a plug to the cur. Make sure you have a couple formats of the cur available. Like have the focus cur enabled, have the regular legacy cur if you haven't enabled, go to enabled cur 2.0. There's just make sure you have your foundation built.
All right, let's take a look at how to actually pull this up. So I'm just in the console. As you guys may have suspected, I have been visiting the billing and cost management console in my test account fairly frequently, so it's top of my list, but let's pop in here. And you will be able to find a cost optimization hub in the savings and commitments section of your left-hand menu. We can just click on it here. We've got a nice product description of how it works available as well. When you scroll down to the bottom, you can either enable it for just this account and all the member accounts if you're like me and in your payer, or you can decide to just enable it at the payer level. The kind of degree to which you share that data is up to you. And you just go ahead and click enable. And it starts chugging away. As you can tell, I'm a really big spender. So
$8.
got $8. Gotta go get that back for sure. One thing to note too, we've done this in my demo account. You can turn it off at any point if it turns out to be a tool that isn't providing value or that you're not loving. I haven't heard of anybody doing that, but some of the hesitation occasionally is that it's like, what happens if we want to back it out? There's a very easy back out in the cost management preferences menu as well. So it's just that easy.
It really is that easy. So everyone go check your accounts after this. And if you are part of a larger organization and maybe you don't have access to your payer account, go talk to the folks that do and encourage them to enable it there. If you're having any pushback or if you need any support, always reach out to your AWS team. We're always happy to explain, the benefits of to why you should. And I think this is where people don't know what they don't know. So if they don't know about being able to enable it at the payer account level, maybe they haven't. And that's where you can come and help champion that and make sure that your teams all have the right resources. So you don't have to have 100 different people going to enable it in their each individual account.
Absolutely. We have another Rick fan in the chat. We're in good company. Rick is in fact the GOAT.
And I think I can speak from this from both sides. When I was a customer, there were so many times that Rick would reach out and just ask for our insight of how could we be supporting you better from a customer standpoint? How could we do this? Is there customers that you'd want to get in touch with to be able to understand how they're using something? And so I would just say for all of you here, um, the best type of recommendation I can have is your recommendation. And so when you're thinking about what do you want to see is, next in the cost optimization hub or next from the product insights team, from the insights team, what do you guys want to see? If you want to post those in the chat here or tell your account teams or anyone, or I guess cost optimization at amazon.com. I need to get back on the lingo. Post them there. I think these are the best insights. And it also lets us figure out trends. When you all share and everyone who's on this, on this stream today shares, we might all find a similar trend that we didn't know that was coming, or maybe we're going down the wrong direction and you guys are helping steer us back towards something that we weren't aware that was important to you.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that perked up my eyebrows a little bit in the chat is we need Athena queries for cost optimization hub exports. So we do have a dashboard in the CID suite that leverages optimization data, but this is a really good call out. I think that's something that we can look into a little bit more on the AWS side to see if there's anything that we can provide out of the box. So we'll take that one as some homework.
Yes, definitely. And pick the top ones you guys would like. If there's a
Mhm.
service you want us to start with an optimization hub or something, there's so many different, recommendations that come through it now. What's the most important to you from a querying standpoint? What would you want to start with?
Yep, absolutely. Oh, one last note on that, and let me know your thoughts on this. Maybe it's just me being out of touch or accustomed to the new pace of things. I feel like the launch velocity of these new features, like how quickly we're getting new things in the cost tooling, has gotten significantly faster in the past couple of years. Alee, is that something that you agree with or dissent to?
I agree with 100% because before coming on here, it's like, I'm going to just do a little quick history and let's look at launches. The amount of pages I had to get through from when I left, I sat there, I was like, wow, all right, I feel a lot older than I am now. I feel like in launch years, I've been gone for like 50 years. It's been so many, and I think you guys have seen it at reInvent. As a customer, I think even just seeing the amount of cost optimization sessions at reInvent. So when I was at reInvent at Amazon in 2021, uh, there were cost optimization sessions, there were FinOps sessions, but I wouldn't say there was a lot of them. And you look at reInvent now, and there is a whole track that goes deep into all the different areas that they're working on, talking about all the different launches and all the different amazing tools out there. And I think that just also speaks volumes to the change in the launch velocity too. FinOps has gone from being more of a scrappy one-off to a true product.
True product.
It
I
is a
love
true
that. No,
product.
that's so real. That's so true, especially with the FinOps Foundation as well. Like, I don't know, I still feel like it's a small industry sometimes, but maybe that's just because I've been in it for a while and I like know everyone's name. But
I think it's a small industry in that, like, it's a very close-knit industry,
Mhm,
and I think, like, FinOps X, for example, the first year it went, there was a couple hundred people there. Now it's
mhm,
thousands, and it's huge, but it still feels close-knit, and I
mhm.
think that's just because of the FinOps space, but I will say that the FinOps industry stretches beyond it. In my new role, I am doing more than FinOps. I'm in the tech innovation space, and the FinOps Foundation, I think I reference it, not the foundation itself, but just the foundation you build in FinOps and how you approach problem solving, how you approach just the space. I use it every day. And I think about, like, okay, first, how do I get scrappy? How do I then scale? How do I make sure I'm doing it delivering value efficiently and using people's, you know, resources and time in the best way that will scale down the road, not just get the task done.
Absolutely. So I know we've got a lot of viewers at like different points in their career and usually have, I would say, a mix of folks who are already in the FinOps space and folks who are on the engineering side and just kind of getting interested in it or sometimes being tasked with a part of it. So I guess my question to you is, how would you recommend that folks go through establishing themselves if they are stepping into one of these roles or if they're dabbling in FinOps for the first time?
I would say the first thing to do if you're dabbling in it is figure out where within FinOps you're interested in. It has grown so wide now. You have folks from the FinOps space who are maybe more engineer focused. You have folks from the FinOps space who might be more finance focused. FinOps is a large practice. You can't know everything within it. Like, there's so many times I'll ping Savannah for a question because she knows an area better than I do, or I think it's like figuring out where within FinOps space you're interested in and starting there, and just becoming an expert in that space. So maybe you want to start with just one tool. Like, for example, I'll just keep using Cost Optimization Hub. Maybe you want to focus on compute optimizer recommendations there and just really truly understand those, understand the process and how to optimize with them, and become known for that in your organization. Hey, if anyone has questions on compute optimizer, I'm the person to go to. You've now established yourself as a SME. You've been able to figure out, as a champion there, who uses those services, and then you can learn from them and you can slowly start to build out your practice areas. But start small, start in an area where you understand it, because I think we all can be generalists, but in the FinOps space, as you're joining, it really helps to get your point of reference and to figure out kind of, hey, I can immediately go into a conversation and add value because I know this area so well.
Absolutely. And I would say, like, when I think about FinOps, and I think we get this question a lot of like, should we come from finance and learn the engineering part, or should we come from engineering and learn the finance part? And the answer is both, either possibly, depending on where your experience lies. But draw on the experience that you have. If you're not as familiar with AWS services, but you are familiar with organizational structure or taxonomy and building taxonomy around a structure, start there. Recommend a tagging strategy. Dive
Yeah.
into some of the like squishier pieces of the puzzle and really kind of dig in and see what you can do, or put some recommendations together for maybe some of those like less technical, less optimization focused pieces that are still so critical to making sure that the entire shop runs, you know?
Exactly. Like, if you look at a lot of the folks who started in FinOps, like for example, me, when I started a while ago, it was because I couldn't understand my bill. And that's why if you look at like kind of my SME expertise and where I first got started, again, it's expanded since then, but it's the cur. I call myself I'm crazy because I spent so much time in the cost and usage report. It's still like one of my most favorite reports to this day, but I did it out of a need. Savannah, how'd you like what was your like how did you kind of start to bridge over?
Yeah, so I feel like most people who started around the same time that we did have like a story of printing out the Kerr columns. I also did that, but I think like what really turned the corner for me because I had been kind of like working on the customer service side at AWS and very familiar with this stuff and making recommendations on like how to use specific products. But it was during COVID, like March 2020, when the world shut down. I was helping my customer at the time build a Kerr pipeline that essentially transformed their Kerr data, and I was stuck in my tiny apartment that's probably about the size of this room by myself. Just me and my spreadsheets and my one monitor and my like terrible chair, just diving into the Kerr data, trying to figure out exactly how I wanted to like make it function the way that I wanted it to look. And I wouldn't say I would do it again in that circumstance, but it was definitely something that I think was super beneficial and that really sparked my passion for this stuff. So similar.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Like thinking back to like the I feel like
The before times.
the before and the after and how much it just caused us to have to accelerate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cost Optam in 2017. You
Yes.
get it. Oh, this is an interesting one. Has anything changed in how you market FinOps initiatives to your customers when it was a baby industry versus now? And how do you tackle a broad spectrum of FinOps with your customers now that there are so many things to learn and do?
I'd say from my side, it's a little bit different because I'm not exactly like on the AWS side, I don't work specifically in FinOps anymore. But
Mhm.
I think that's kind of it's almost changed how I would approach it because I still bring FinOps into every conversation. I think I just change how I position it based on who I'm talking to. I don't come in and call out FinOps, but
Mhm.
at the root of every discussion, I'm always talking about the best practices and how to think about it ahead of time because I think if you don't upfront think about, for example, like modernization and all of these areas, it's it's too late by time
Mhm.
you deploy it and it can be a negative experience. So how do we take the core concepts and apply those as I'm speaking with my customers? Savannah, from your side, how about you? Because you've actually worked with customers through it all.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because we still have a lot of folks who are starting their cloud journey. So in some ways, it almost feels now like we have the entire spectrum. Whereas if you look back to like 2018, it was a very different landscape. Didn't even have savings plans yet at that time. Crazy to think about. But I think like depending on where you are in that like cloud maturity journey, the asks get a lot different. And it's always interesting, especially if you're like walking into a room or walking into a call of folks that you've never talked to before, to have to pulse check on where they're at in that journey. Is this a scenario where they're just getting started and can clean up some of those low hanging fruit and really get some quick wins and get some kind of momentum there and see the value of this stuff? Or have they already done steps 100 through 400 and now we're looking at like how to build a cost aware culture or how to build a structure in your organization that automates some of these things? So I don't know how much some of the like first FinOps conversations have changed. I think those are honestly a little bit standard when you're like introducing folks to the space and the concepts for the first time. But the range of what you get is very different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to continue to like with Gen AI coming more into the
Oh
space
yeah.
too. Like I think if we talk about this, if you ask the same question next year, it's going to be crazy probably how much innovate, how much innovation, how many things have changed. Also the way folks do FinOps at a mature level will probably
Mhm.
scale significantly just because we're seeing that take off.
Absolutely. Absolutely. New services to look at, new pricing concepts to learn as well. Always more.
Yeah, they're seeing yeah, Gen AI services for cost allocation now and just optimization. I think that's going to be an untapped, but you also don't want to block innovation on it too. So it's the happy medium of how do you run those services efficiently.
Yeah, how do you build an understanding of what they're costing you and whether or not it's like efficient in the way that you want it to be for sure.
Yes.
Big question. Hard problem, but it's good to have hard problems because I would rather have an interesting problem that gets me somewhere than the alternative. Awesome. So I guess drawing on your time as a customer, we've talked a little bit about some of the things that you'd recommend folks do in terms of like tooling enablement. Is there any lesson learned about kind of how you approach uh, work that is potentially looking very overwhelming when you first step into the role that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I'd say like so when I first got started as a customer, I think the first thing I did was you don't want to assume anything. And I think that's most important because if you think about FinOps, we're effectively coming in and telling people how they're running their environment has some opportunities. I don't want to say problems because I think we always want to spin it as a positive.
Mhm.
And so if you come in and you start just jumping into the problems or the opportunities that you're finding, you're going to not have the trust with the teams. And so before I even took the role that I actually that I accepted in my previous role, when I was a customer, I actually reached out to some of the folks that I had known there and said, "Hey, I'm thinking about taking this role. Do you think I would be a good fit for it? I'd be directly working with your teams. I want to make sure that I have your support before I jump in and accept this because it's important that you have the team support. If you don't know folks, it's totally okay. You still can jump in. But I think what you're trying to do is just build that foundation and understanding and trust with the folks that you're going to be working with. So I worked really hard at the beginning to build out that trust, build out the connections, not focus on what I wanted them to do, but focus on what I could help them with. So I would reach out to all these different teams and say, "Hey, I just wanted to like check in and see how you do your processes. Can I shadow? Can I understand?" And pick up on the areas that was making life hard for them. And I started to just trend those out. And after about a month of doing that, I went to them and said, "Hey, I have some quick wins. Again, use your superpower. Use the areas that you have that well, and you can come into a room and speak confidently on it, even when you just are still learning." And so I was able to go to a lot of these teams that became my big support system and give them little nuggets of optimization that made them look awesome, were very low effort and low risk. And
Mhm.
by doing so, I one was able to first understand them, second, earn their trust, and third, make them look great to their leadership. If you can make them look great, anyone at your organization look good to your leadership, you're doing your job well. It's not about what you can do, it's what you can help elevate them do. And their success will trickle down to you as well, but you want them to shine and that they will then become your champion.
Absolutely. Building those bridges is so key. And anytime that you can really encourage some of that positive recognition, I feel like it just makes everything take off, which is great. Ooh, we've got a good one. Alee, your presentation at FinOpsX in 2023 covering the differences between savings, spend reduction, and cost avoidance was great. Can you explain the differences again? I would love to hear this.
I think this goes back to everyone is always at a different stage of their journey and maturity. And the reason this came about is when I was a customer, we had a huge savings initiative where we had a CEO down initiative that we need to cut cost and save money. Well, what we quickly found is what does savings even mean?
Mm.
If you ask, and I challenge all of you to ask this at your organization, what does savings mean? Ask it to an engineer, ask it to your finance team, ask it to a leader. I'm pretty sure you'll get three different answers. An engineer is probably going to say a savings is anything I do. A finance person, and this is where I really had to learn it, is Uh, a savings to our finance teams, at least my organization, was anything below our budget because we were only budgeted to spend a certain amount of money. So if you were saving, but it was above that, if you were lowering your cost, but it was above the budget,
Mm.
you weren't actually getting any of your cash in hand. So savings really is the easiest way to think about it, at least at my organization. Again, yours might be different, or my old organization was cash in hand. You should be able to walk away with that cash and have it. If it's above your budget, you're reducing your costs, but you don't have any cash in your hand after. There was no cash to begin with there. You were already over. And then the best of them all is a cost avoidance. What better way to have more cash in your hand and to not have to worry about any of this is to never spend that to begin with. So you can think of cost avoidance as anything proactive that you're doing to optimize before that cost is even incurred.
Absolutely. I think it's super critical to define these things within your organization too, because as you mentioned, like we can talk about things very differently between companies, between cultures, et cetera. So making sure that we have an understanding of like how to measure these impacts and how to think about them. Cost avoidance is honestly, I think, one of the harder ones to message sometimes, because if you like have developed enough hygiene to know that you have to clean something up or to spin something down, and you can prevent those costs from ever occurring, that's great, but they never hit the bill to begin with. So how are we going to kind of spin that to show the work and to show the value?
Yep. And I
Yeah.
love someone's comment about getting a free couch from Costco as an example of future cost avoidance. It definitely is. Although I will say your time is also a cost.
Yeah.
And Savannah's
Yeah.
time trying to figure out the cost after, because I have a feeling Costco would have came back for that. Actually, Costco has great customer service. Maybe
Probably.
they wouldn't. But no, I think this is the key thing. And I challenge you guys to do it beyond just, a savings, a spend reduction or cost reduction, and a cost avoidance. Put it with all your different terms, especially, uh, especially Gen AI terms, especially any terms that you guys are working with the different teams that you think that your leaders will question.
Mm-hmm.
Just have a quick cheat sheet of, hey, here's what we mean when we're talking about it. If you mean something different, let us know.
And I will say too, like these terms could have slightly different flavors depending on which service or which initiative you're looking at, and who you're talking to, right? Like if we think about modernizing or migrating to Graviton, like that can mean very different things to different people. And some may see it as a cost avoidance, and some may see it as a technical optimization that just happens to have an impact on cost. So make sure that that's being clearly communicated and kind of the end-to-end value there is being told in a way that your audience will receive well.
I I mean, the word migration just right there. I had someone actually at my old. I will not name names on this, but someone actually told me migration is only when you're moving onto the cloud. It's not when you're moving across services. And I was like, that's helpful for me to understand that that's how you approach it. So I had to
Mm-hmm.
change the way I talk to them, but I never thought about that because I think
Mm-hmm.
about like when you're migrating from, you know, to Graviton, that's a migration.
Or
And
region to region even.
yeah, and they're calling that an optimization or a modernization. And and
Interesting.
and I again, everyone has their own flavor.
Mm-hmm.
It's just how can you make sure you understand it, and when you're talking you say this is how I think about it and this is what
Yeah,
it means to me. And and and, and it just helps set that context of everyone starts with the same understanding, even if you don't mean it the same way, you have that cheat sheet to fall back on.
absolutely. The other one that I think we see a lot, effectiveness of spend in cloud. This also I think requires a little bit of quantification occasionally, because I've seen folks do this at like different levels of their organization depending on how granular their cost allocation is. So if we think about unit cost at like a EC2 wide level across everything, and we're just looking at like perhaps exactly what is shown in the CID in terms of your EC2 normalized usage cost, that's one level of spend effectiveness. But if we can split it down by business unit or by product, like that gets you a little bit more granular. So it's important to think about what you're trying to achieve, I feel, with some of those.
Yep.
Thoughts
No,
on that, or
I,
any creative things you've seen people do there? I feel like sometimes I'm like, how did you even think of this? That's awesome.
I think this is where it's like get really creative in your organization too and figure out what resonates with it, like the unit cost metrics and things such as that. Um, that's actually a really like going back to when you're first getting started, metrics and quick little areas of thinking like that are a really great way to become known.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you have a way to find a few metrics, don't do too many because you'll get analysis paralysis. But if you can come in and just start to think about like, hey, I found these metrics that one align with our business, that two align with the FinOps priorities, and start showing them. I think that's going to help you, one, figure out what effectiveness in the cloud is and figure out what it means to resonate with your teams. But two, you now become known as the person who helped curate and helped develop these. And those metrics will start to be the foundation of your leadership's reporting of how you're doing effectively. It gives you something to have a consistent conversation with. So I really like that effectiveness in the cloud view.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Ooh, we've got another interesting one that I think is close to both of our hearts. How do you use the well-architected framework in your organization? Cost optimization is one of the pillars. Do you also apply the other pillars in practice?
I think you have to apply all the pillars in practice. And security is always the most important.
Mm-hmm.
And this is actually where another untapped area within optimization is security. And I don't mean you should get into the security space, but I mean the security teams should become your best friends. They have their job that they have to do. The security team is if you ask AWS, security is always the number one priority. Like it comes first over a new feature, over anything. Security has to come first, as it should in your organization. If you're not secure, it's detrimental to your
You're in
business.
for trouble.
Yes, it's detrimental to your business. And so if you think about the security aspect of it, though, if you understand how your teams think, what tools they're using, do you know how much data they are getting? There's so much optimization data in there. So if you
Ye
can
old cloud trail.
oh yes,
It's
yield, cloud
watching.
trail, any types of monitoring agents and things such of that on that. There's so much powerful data that they're doing that if you understand the other pillars, and
Mhm.
you don't need to be an expert in them, but understand how your organization thinks about it. Because again, every organization is slightly different. So yes, the cost optimization pillar is the most important in my opinion, because that was the space I was in. But to your organization, it's probably security, or it's probably, another area within it. Understand how your organization checks for those. Talk to the folks who are running and your counterparts in those spaces and figure out how you can kind of embed with them and understand their processes, their practices, and how you might be able to layer cost optimization on top of that. So, for example, a great example of this is end of life. End of life is an
Haha.
activity that every customer has impacted by. There's always end of life. There's a cost impact to some versions of end of life, but there's
Mhm.
always a security impact to end of life. So your
Mhm.
security teams are already on top of this. They already should be aware of it. But how can you maybe say, hey, as we're doing this, could we add another optimization or efficiency pillar in place on it? Yes, it doesn't become a security concern until a little bit later, but if we're proactive, we're also going to be able to save X amount of dollars. And so
Yep.
being able to understand your organization's practices of the other pillars will help you be more effective in your role.
The other very real world example that popped into my mind when you were talking about all the different data that people have access to, one of my colleagues and I were working with a customer to understand their CloudWatch spend, and we had a ton of CloudWatch spend, like more than we'd expect, and ended up having to work with security to get access to CloudTrail to understand what was driving some of it. And it turns out there was a downstream system that somebody had plugged in and they thought was turned off, but it was paying CloudWatch like every 5 minutes, and that's what was generating all this cost. And like, would we have been able to figure it out without that? Probably, but it would have taken us so much longer. And our security friends just took a peek and we're like, "Yep, that's what's going on," and we were able to get it resolved so quickly. So
Oh my
they're
gosh.
they're there.
And that's again,
Mhm.
find those little like it all started with the data. You probably saw
Mhm.
costs starting to increase. You saw something there. Go talk to those different
This one.
teams. Oh, yes.
This one especially, yeah.
Yes. Again, you have a lot of
Mhm.
data at your fingertips that have the cost associated. Cost is a conversation starter. It
Mhm.
it really brings it in. So if you're able to understand, like, hey, that CloudWatch Metrics API, why is it so expensive?
Mhm.
Why is our cost going up there? Or why is our cost just so large in that bucket? Go talk to the person who's responsible for it. And that's where you can come in and help add some best practices, but also figure out if there's a better way to get that information to your teams that they're trying to get.
That I think that one's key too. Like, what are we measuring here?
Yep.
Let's talk about what the end goal is because there might be a different way to get at it. It might be something that somebody checks once a month that we don't need super granular data for, or it might be something that is truly critical to their business. And if it is something that folks are leveraging very well and getting benefit from, then that might be something to scale out across the organization as well. So you really do have to build that understanding. Start with the customer first, even if that's like your own internal customer. If
Yep.
you're out there. The other well architected related plug that I like to remind people of is the resilience benefit of scale up and scale down. So instant scheduling, powering down things in test environments over the weekend. Not only does that save you a lot of money, but it is really good practice for your architecture because you get into that motion of kind of scaling up and scaling down. So if there is any event that tests your resilience, you've got that muscle already built.
Yes, definitely. And actually kind of going on like the all well architected, I always want to bring it back to like you as a customer. If you're a customer, we're talking about all these. AWS has so many resources to help you run well architected reviews or just even answer these questions of like, hey, like where should I be looking to or within my organization, where are some areas that I should be focusing on? Use your AWS team. They are there to support you. And I think that is one of the areas just to kind of tie it back to you as a customer. If you want to be effective, use all the tools at your disposal. And some of those tools are the amazing resources from your account teams.
Mhm.
And they have resources to specialist teams too. So so I think this is an untapped area that we sometimes see is you're solving a problem yourself, solve it as a team and bring in the
Mhm.
right folks to support your team. There would be so many times where, for example, going to your resilience question, like I wouldn't think of that. And my account team would actually my SA or my TAM would say, "Hey,
The
like
teams.
yes, go talk to so and so at your organization. I think they'd be a great resource for you." And it
Mhm.
was amazing to see how they were able to help connect me with someone because they had heard that person was working in that space or had worked with them directly in there, and they would help connect the dots. They would also bring me back to reality on my kind of ideas where it's like, hey, we should go do a mass optimization initiative of X, Y, and Z. And they're like, no, that's not going to fly because X, Y, and Z. You're not thinking about this holistically. Here's what I think you should do instead. And they
Mhm.
would really help me curate the best recommendations and the best opportunities and the ways to approach it at scale that would scale with my organization. Because your TAMs, your different account team members are embedded really with your teams and they know how they run very well. They also know how other customers are doing it too.
Mhm. And I will say too, for those of you who may not have an account team or maybe just starting out, blogs and customer anecdotes are a big resource that you can use that's very similar. And then you can always leverage Support Center and creating a case through Support Center. We do take those very seriously and we take the feedback on them very seriously. And I speak from experience because when I first started out here, it was me on the other end of that Support Center case typing the little answers back to you guys. So
Oh my gosh. No,
use your available resources, whatever they are.
that is so I mean, even to this day I control F in the FinOps Foundation
Oh yeah.
Slack channel, like to find when I was
Yep.
a customer, that was my go-to. Like before I'd ask a question, I would control F and see what what was in there.
Yep. Search engine,
Yep.
question, AWS, look for the blogs, look for other resources, look for everything that's out there. I think that is like a really wholesome part of how the space has grown. Like when we first started out, there were not very many resources and not a ton of documentation. And I think everybody really took that to heart and has worked very hard to contribute to that space. because now we've got a lot more at our fingertips, which is great.
Yep. And I encourage you guys to start writing out there too. Like I think this is what for your organization, if you're doing something that works well, writing it is a great way to spread it across. And you could have your own mini blog series for your organization of, or hey, here's some quick facts or quick resources. It gives you a way to practice your writing skills, but also become known throughout your organization.
Oh, absolutely. And I don't know, this is maybe the Amazon of me talking, but I feel like the process of writing it down and like communicating it clearly always really helps me like really sort everything out in my head. Or maybe I've just written a lot of docs over the time that I've been here and now I'm bought in.
Oh my gosh.
Jeez. All right, we're coming up to the top of the hour, but we've got some good questions in the chat. This is always a fun one. Is there a specific service that you enjoy optimizing the most?
Yes. But I would say, so I think I'm always going to default back to S3 because I just think S3 is one of my favorite services to get started with because no matter who you're talking to, everyone is almost always using some form of S3 because it's data is your foundation. Data is you'll hear it with Gen AI, data is your differentiator. Well, where does data sit? S3. And so I think S3 is a great way to start. But I will say being as a customer, I think, yes, S3 lifecycle
Lifecycle rules.
rules. And if you don't want to mess around with that S3 lifecycle, just turn on intelligent tiering.
Yeah.
There's so many just quick wins that you can do there. But I would say the one thing that shocked me the most as a customer is how many folks don't want to do the services that optimize this, start with the services that I thought they'd want to optimize first.
Oh,
Like
really?
EC2 was always the last one people wanted to talk about. Um, and the reason why this is if you're running at a larger organization, you're typically in a containerized environment, and you might have some central teams who are putting the guidance on that, or it might be more shared infrastructure across it.
Yeah.
They wanted to look at the optimization of services that they had complete control over. So we
Got
found a lot of
you.
areas within like DynamoDB or Kinesis Streams and things like that where that one team fully owned and managed that service area that in their environment. And so it's a lot easier for them to do that because they had full accountability of it. And so I
Yeah.
think that was one of the areas that shocked me the most is just because I think it's easy or I think it's a starting out as, kind of a simple, a lot of data, a lot of areas to tell the story, doesn't mean it's the right optimization. So see what your teams are thinking about and start there.
Yeah. My mind immediately went to like savings plans. And I was like, what do you mean you don't want to buy a savings plan? Or like you don't want to optimize your EC2 by even
So
the
I
2%.
so see I don't see savings so
That's the
I
different
don't see
part of that.
savings plans as a service optimization though. I see it as a pricing model
Yeah,
optimization.
that's fair. That's
And
true.
and that's how and at my old organization, that's how we would think about it. Savings plans were a pricing model organization. Engineers need to understand what we have from a savings plan perspective, but they're not accountable for purchasing it or optimizing it. That would be me doing that behind the scenes and making sure they're aware. And I just would keep it coverage consistent. So yes, I would say pricing models and all of that are probably my favorite because I had full control over it, but it also is risky because if a team changed how they run, you could be trying to figure out different strategies very quickly.
Scrambling.
But savings plans,
Yeah.
and if you haven't checked out savings plans analyzer too on the console, please check that out, guys.
Shout out Mary. We love you,
Yes,
Mary. Great
see,
launch.
I did that all in Excel when I first started out as a customer. When I was at AWS, I built so many Excels around how to look at this. As I was ending my time as a customer, I was able to completely use AWS's native tool for it. And I didn't need to pull scrappy Kerr reports to visualize it. I was actually just able to jump in and use the native tool. And that was really awesome to see how much that tool had progressed from just seeing numbers when they first launched savings plans in 2019.
Oh yeah, full circle moment if we think back to that fateful day in 2019 when all of that stuff went live in console. I remember the amount of questions that we got about what tooling is going to be available, what do we have, can we get these recommendations at like a XYZ level, and we didn't have all of that built out initially, so it was a lot of Excel and a lot of reactively figuring out like what's going to be the best way to model these things for customers and help them understand. And now like the tool set that we have is so robust. It allows for that like what if analysis directly in console. You can go back to it, you can look at it. We've got a lot of pretty visuals that make sense. It's great. Love to see the progress. Love the
Definitely.
growth.
It's like I wish I would have recorded how I had to look at all these tools or figure out these processes back in 2019 and then looked at what I do now.
I
It would
think it was, I'm forgetting whether or not we actually pulled it up or not, but a while back on an episode, I think Alex, Steph, and I looked at like a Cost Explorer screenshot from like when we first launched Cost Explorer, like way back before we even worked at AWS. And we were like, what is this? This is
yeah,
so different. Crazy.
it well, I mean, if you think about like savings plans, when you used to go purchase your savings plans, there was no visualization of it really. It was just
Mm-hmm.
numbers there, and you're purchasing millions of dollars worth of things,
Mm-hmm.
commitments, and you're. I remember sitting there clicking, and I was like, "Do I click the button? Do I click the button? Did I get it right? Did I get it right?" This is terrifying because it's so easy to mess up, and now they
Yeah.
have the resources there and the guardrails up and the
Mm-hmm.
tools as a customer to say, "Okay, visually I see, I'm confident, I know I'm doing this right now."
Yeah. I cannot count. I'm sure you're probably in the same bucket. I cannot count the number of calls that I've sat on with a customer. Like when I was their support on the AWS side of just being like, okay, I know how to do it, but can you just chaperone while I make this purchase because it's big and scary,
N s Car
which is
Kari and
so
Kari
fair,
and
by the
Amber,
way.
they literally I think they're part of our optics AWS team that got to work with me when I was a customer. I would ping them and say, "Hey, purchased these. Can you double check they look okay on your end?" Because I
Yep.
was just always so afraid I did something wrong, even though I worked at AWS before and
Mhm.
I knew it. It's just so large and so easy to click add an extra zero or click the wrong button or did I get the terms and everything right that I was trying to do?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Again, shout out support. We're always happy to help. I will take as many of those calls as customers need to make sure that everybody's feeling
Yes.
confident about it.
Okay. I have one last thing as a customer
Shout out.
that I want to
Hurry
say
up.
that everyone should be doing. Semi-annual or annual audits of your processes. And by that I mean document what your processes are doing. Make sure everyone on your teams know how you're doing your processes. So for example, data collection, what tools you have enabled, how you guys process any of your optimization data. And share that with your AWS account team if you have them. If you don't, share that with your other teams. And just make sure everyone's aware of it because there's things changing so quickly that if a new feature comes out, your AWS team might be able to tell you, hey, you can use it this way based on how you're running your services. Or if someone within your own organization sees how they're doing it, they might say, hey, we actually want to add this company specific data point into this. I think it fit well this way because I know your process and I understand it. So make sure everyone is aware, make sure you're auditing, making sure that you're always looking around the next corner and
Mhm.
and giving your teams the best foundation for success.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think making sure that you're doing that iteration and review is really critical, especially with KPIs. I know a lot of people get analysis paralysis, or at least I do sometimes when I'm walking into a new environment and trying to figure out how to make heads or tails of it and figure out what those goals are. Index on doing something, making it exist first. You can make it look pretty kind of down the line, but it's got to exist before you can start using it. So big, big shout out for that for sure. Looks like we got some fans as well. Awesome.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, Alee. Really appreciate the conversation and you coming back and joining us, even though you're not strictly on the FinOps side anymore. Any like extra last thoughts in our last 30 seconds?
I think I really liked how you ended that with, you have to start somewhere. Like you get it out there. You might not be right, but it's your first wrong answer. And I think that's the FinOps space. Be scrappy still. Yes, there are a lot more tools available, but still be scrappy. And I think that mindset will help set you apart within your organization. So never be afraid to try something out. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. But also just leverage all your resources and happy optimizing.
Happy optimizing. All right. Thanks. Take care, everybody. Have a
See
good
ya.
one.